What's good, collective? What's good? Today, I know you've seen the title. We're going to be demystifying chemistry for spiritual purposes. Okay, what do I mean by that? The way things are taught, all right, there's a lot of good observations, there's a lot of good science. We don't deny science here, but the problem is they make it very materialistic, which is not good for the purposes of learning what things are and how it ties into our purpose and how everything functions, okay? And it makes things confusing, it throws people's minds off, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense. It does, okay? And there's evidence, that's why I'm here to present it today, okay? So, before we even get into that, where does chemistry come from? Obviously, chemistry comes from alchemy, which comes from chemet, okay? And their ideas, which they think it comes from, is, like metallurgy and potteries and mixing different, like, colors together for different things like that. And mummification, different things. And chemistry has to do with, like, field theory and nuclear physics and, basically, these sciences weren't separate. And as we go through the series, we're going to see that as well. Okay? So, what I'd like to address firsthand is that chemists, as scientists, as a branch of science in modern science, has probably done the most damage to this planet we live on. Okay? That's a very serious thing. Okay? From nukes to testing on animals to destroying environments, all for strictly the purposes of science. Okay? So, addressing the elephant in the room, this stuff, there's no good or evil, but human beings have done some messed up things. Okay? We have to address that. So, moving on. What is chemistry? According to people now, how would they view chemistry? Okay? Well, chemistry is the scientific study of matter, what it's made out of, its properties, how it behaves, and how it changes, particularly during chemical reactions. Okay? So in science nowadays, they teach a difference between matter and light, which matter is just a denser version of light. Okay? That's going to lead to problems, which we're going to see later. Alright? So let's see what they're saying. So chemical bonds. What are chemical bonds? Okay? And what are chemical reactions? What are these things? Okay? Let's kind of get into that, and then we'll see what they say, and we'll see how that ties in. So basically, a chemical is a collection of what they call atoms. Okay? And what an atom is, according to them, is this nucleus with electrons orbiting it, okay? And this whole model that actually doesn't exist, okay? And when people take pictures of these things and these structures, they see everything's like toroidal or ball-shaped, and that has to do with field geometry and how everything exists within an electric field. And learning the geometry of the electric field makes it easier to understand what these people are talking about. So, it is taught and known, even in mainstream science, that the chemical makeup of an atom is what determines which atom it is. Okay, so what I mean by that, and what they mean by that, is the amount of protons and the amount of electrons determines the chemical element. Okay, very simple. But what are protons and electrons? Okay, if people paid attention in the quantum physics video, which we'll have that linked in the description if people haven't seen. If you're new here, welcome, subscribe, okay? But we're going through this series where we're explaining what things are, which will later make sense when we're explaining spiritual things and the proofs and how the ancestors and everything they wrote with their pictures and their stories, how everything is very scientific and it's not mythological as they claim, okay? So moving on. What is an atom? Okay, that's a collection of protons and electrons, and they say neutrons. But a neutron is basically a proton is a neutron. okay, but it's in an electrified state. Okay, it's in a polarized electrified state. Okay, and an electron is just capacity, it's dielectric capacity. Okay, so the more capacity an atom has, okay, and more compression, which would be the electrified state of a neutron, right, which represents compression, okay, not refraction, okay, it's compression, right, you're balling up all this energy and storing it, okay, you're compressing it, right. So the more energy you have, that's when you start getting higher energy elements like gamma radiation. That's where that comes from, where you get the uranium, you get all these things that are radioactive. That's just high energy light, okay, which you add more electrons, which is more capacity for dielectric capacity. That's more power storage, okay, more compression, more power storage, okay. So atoms with different storage capacities within fields and different field pressures react differently. That's chemical reactions, okay? But chemical reactions could happen different ways, okay? Because the frequencies, some frequencies are denser and some frequencies are lighter, okay? That's why things are liquids, solids, and gases, okay? And each element reacts differently to each other, all right? So a good example, right? Water and oil, how they separate, okay? But how do elements bond, right? So chemical bonds are forces that hold atoms together in molecules. Compounds resulting from reactions from their electrons, their capacity storage, okay? So let's go over a few chemical bonds, okay? So we can see the electric effects and how everything is electric, okay? And what is electric? Okay, and then what are the fields that make electricity? Right, and how does everything stem from that, right? So ionic bonds, right? What are ions? Those are free electrons. What is electrons? Dielectric capacity, right? Covalent bonds, when atoms share a pair of electrons, okay? Capacity, okay? Metallic bonds, found in metals. Sea of electrons, okay, or hydrogen bonds, okay, it occurs in molecules, okay, high electronegative, okay, electronegative is compression, okay, negative and positive, basically, negative charge and positive charge don't exist, there's no charge, there's no emission of anything happening, okay, when I speak, there's no emission of sound, okay, I'm vibrating the air molecules. That's what's happening, okay? So basically, when they say negative, right, you're speaking of compression, all right? Because refraction would be radiation, okay? Within the Walter Russell mindset, okay? And gravity would be compression, okay? In the Victor Schauberger mindset, it would be centrifugal and centripetal, okay? Same concepts of this duality, this polarization, okay, of what's happening because of a magnetic field and what happens within a magnetic field, okay, because there's no north or south, because when you cut a magnet, there's still a north and south. So what's happening is refraction and compression within a toroidal field, okay, that's what compresses energy, okay, it's a compression of energy, okay, it's not these pieces of matter, this piece of matter and this piece of matter doing all these things. It happens too on this level when it's denser like that, but that's not the explanation of what's happening and how it's happening, okay? So we're gonna go over how do scientists even view these reactions and what's going on, and everything has to do with light. And their view of light being a wave and a particle is wrong. Clearly demonstrated already. And we're going to keep demonstrating that throughout this process. But if you don't even know what you're experimenting on, then how are you going to understand the results of the experiment, right? So, scientists use techniques like lasers, okay, they use light, they use different things to view chemical compounds. Okay, even with stars and spectroscopy, it has to do with light and viewing the chemical structures. It all has to do with light. And if they don't know what light is, right? So, spectroscopy is used in biochemistry, right? Involves measuring interactions of electromagnetic radiation and matter, which is the same thing in a denser form, matter. Okay, it allows researchers to see molecular structures and behavior of biological molecules. This technique is based on the principle that molecules absorb and emit radiation at specific wavelengths. Okay, that's not what's happening in emission. What's happening is a disturbance, and they could measure that disturbance. And the more something vibrates like this, the more the disturbance there is. Okay, it's actually very simple, which they overcomplicate it because of their materialistic science that they bring into us. But there's good information because the observations are true and they're doing experiments. They're just not understanding what it is. And actually, the government is understanding. They're just hiding it, okay, with stuff like the Invention Secrecy Act and all these things. People know. It's just the stuff they're teaching, okay? And for the people who are gonna do things for the future of this planet, they need the right information. Okay, so when we're teaching and educating, right, we're gonna teach the truth because that's what we're here to do. Okay, so moving on. This is a picture of an atom right there. That little ball of light that they're making all these things inside of it, these quarks and all this stuff that they can't even see. Because look at the size of that thing. This is an atom. That ball of light. That ball of light. Every atom is a hydrogen atom. Okay, it's just a hydrogen atom in a different phase. Okay, with more potential energy and storage. Okay, and basically, what's happening here, right? You have this cell, right? So basically, like if you have something with batteries, right, like a remote, right? What they're calling batteries, those things that you put in it, those aren't batteries. Okay, they're called cells. Okay, and when you put those cells together, that's what creates the battery. Okay, so hydrogen atoms are a bunch of cells that create batteries that power the universe. Okay, and this is a picture of it. All right, notice how it's so tiny. We can't even see nothing. Yet they think they know the structures of these little particles. Listen now, this is an atom. Okay, it's just a ball of light. It's not a material, physical thing. Okay, as far as matter, as far as a dense vibration. Okay, very important. So what is chemistry then? Chemistry is the reaction of elements through frequencies. Okay, there's something called chromatic chemistry. Anyone can look this up. Okay, chromatic chemistry. That is the relationship between light and sound and chemistry. All right, this is an actual science that exists. All right, chemistry isn't this thing where it's like just matter and these are just like these particles, these marbles inside of a bag that are smashing against each other and creating all these things. These are field interactions which create actual things that we call matter, which are physical. Okay, so understand that. Okay, anyone can look up chromatic chemistry. That's the relationship between sound, light, and chemistry, the science of it. Okay. So, we've been sold a lot of lies, even in nuclear physics. Okay, and I went over some stuff about nuclear physics. Okay, we went over that there's only two particles that exist, an electron and a neutron. Okay, and a proton is just a neutron in an electrified, polarized state. Okay, and everything else that they're calling particles are just those in different states. Okay, like a Higgs boson is just protons colliding. Okay, and those little remnants, they're calling actual things. Okay, which is like calling the embers that fall off a campfire things within themselves. And scientists like to name a bunch of things. That's what they like to do. They like to name a bunch of things. As soon as they see a little dot on something, oh, that's its own thing within itself. Okay, they got 100 names for water. Okay, mist, ice, steam. They got 1,000,000 names for things when it's just one thing. All right, they like to mess with people's heads. So nuclear radiation, these elements that are radioactive, what's going on? They're just high energy light and storage capacity. Okay, it has a lot of electrons, has a lot of storage capacity for dielectric power, and has a lot of protons, which are neutrons in an electrified polarized state, meaning maximum compression, meaning ball energy, ball light. Anyone seen ball lightning? That's what that is. It's the same thing on a bigger scale. Okay, and that's what stars are on a bigger scale. We'll get into that. Anyway, this video was posted in 1986, okay, by Galen Windsor, okay? The nuclear scare scam, okay? And then within this video, all right, what we're going to see is he says the same thing, that these radioactive elements that actually aren't harmful to you, which they lied about, okay, are just high energy light, okay? And for people who are saying, oh, you're just talking crap, what's your credentials, all right? Sulfur pulls. Sulfur pulls. How do you make sulfur pulls? Uranium. Supposedly radioactive, bad for you, okay? People, the science exists. They just want to scramble our brains, all right? And they don't want people to be smart. They don't want people to study. They don't want people to do their own research. They want to criticize people. They want you to learn a certain way. They want you to be a master of one thing and not dip into other subjects, not learn things, not master many crafts, okay? They want to limit people on many levels and want to materialize science and make it something that is supposed to be against us when it's not. We come from science. Our ancestors are science all day. This is where chemistry, this is where all these things come from, okay? Nowadays, they're basically, how do you isolate a chemical, right? Through liquid, through electrostatics, right? Through different processes that have been done, okay? So the whole idea of turning lead to gold and all that stuff, which is a later idea of what chemistry is, basically transmutation has to do on a soul level, which is also chemistry, which is knowing the field, okay? And knowing that we come from the field, okay? And that everything manifests from that field and that you're connected, okay? So there's no craziness when you're thinking about a portal, okay? Because you see a portal within a magnetic field, okay? It's not crazy. It's actually pretty out there with a lot of information. That's why I'm able to do this. And people are like, oh, what's your credentials? My credentials is information and evidence, all right? So hold that. And actually, when I'm talking to my people, we don't even really need none of this because people are tapped in and they could use their intuition to know if someone's lying or not. So really, even though I'm presenting this for the collective so that we actually have a base, right? And then when I create these PDFs, like we have a base, right? So we could start building even further. Really, this is also a slap in the face of the institutions and the people who are acting like, oh, we're experts in this field. Well, here's all the evidence to say that you're lying when it comes to your explanations. And we know your math equations work. That's how engineering works. But we know there's different interpretations and we know there's evidence. And we want to know the truth. And if you're satisfied with your math equations, go be satisfied over there. Stop hating. So, speaking of nuclear models, this was an article. Lead's bizarre response to electrons forces physicists to rethink nuclear models. Okay, so what we're going to find about lead is it has very interesting properties. Okay, and that's why people were fascinated by it even back in the ancient times. And that's why it's associated with Saturn. Okay, so when you talk about turning lead to gold, okay, we're talking about the golden age of Saturn, from lead to the golden age to the sun, which is yellow. Okay, this transmutation and they were talking about different things than what people are thinking off the bat. Because a lot of them just read the pictures on the wall and misinterpreted it, right? And that's how a lot of these religions got here too. So that's the evidence on that. Anyway, moving on. Why does everything decay into lead? Very high density, right? Very high frequency, very low frequency, right? Everything decays into lead, transmutating lead into gold, which is a later process, right? Stick with me. If alchemy was the idea of turning lead to gold, when scientists turn lead to gold, what do they do in alchemy? Did they not just prove alchemy? We've seen videos on that. Oh, people are gonna deny. Oh, that doesn't prove alchemy. Okay, that's fine. You know, that's why I shared that PDF and the other videos about the Stanford experiment, where people's biases, and you could present them with all the information in the world, they're still gonna hate, still gonna deny it, right? That's why we're slamming them with information here. So, what will determine chemistry? What can help us determine chemistry? There's something called Walter Russell's periodic table. A lot of people heard of it. It's popular now. Okay, it's been popular for a while. Okay. Basically explaining all the elements. Okay, this is the spiral way of viewing it. Okay, there's another way you can view it, right? In more the serpent way, right? It maps out frequencies, pressure gradients, and the elements and how they fit into these octaves, okay, into these scales. All right. And Walter Russell, for a lot of people who hate on him in the mainstream community, you know, he did predict the radioactive elements, okay, before anyone else, right? With his model here. And he actually had to sit back and watch other scientists win Nobel Prizes for discovering things that he already discovered. Okay. Beyond this, he was a sculptor, okay? He introduced figure skating to America. He's done a lot of things. So for people to hate on him scientifically, it has to do with his feelings towards the mainstream science community, which when you study the people who actually did things and came up with like these genius ideas, they were always on the fringe of science anyway, because that's how you push things forward. Not by agreeing with everyone holding hands, kumbaya, by trying to prove something, and you do experiments, it either comes out or not, okay? But it's not personal, okay? A lot of these people want to play these games where, they all agree, so it's true. Agreement's cool. But we're getting a lot of agreeing stuff, but we come up with evidence too, and we're not misinterpreting things, okay? We're showing evidence, we're displaying, okay? And we're explaining phenomena, not just giving math equations and saying, oh, because it works, it's true. That's not the case, okay? So, moving on. How do we know frequency determines chemical structure? Simple. Here's a good piece of evidence. How large gold nuggets form in quartz crystals during earthquakes. Frequency, energy capacity, storage space. Understand? Understand how they try to materialize something that's not even material? Okay? So, there's people who known this for a while, alright? You're gonna see all the geniuses, they all agree. And when I say geniuses, as far as science within the newer centuries, okay? There were always geniuses, and these people's works match the works of geniuses before them, the predecessors, which we would call the ancient mystics and scholars. Okay? So that's why it's important to learn the truth, because the truth actually matches your history. Okay, not his story, your story. Okay? Anyway, Michael Faraday, he's like the god, right? In the science community, right? He had something called biochemistry, right? Where he proved that electricity and chemistry are tied in. They have a mutual relationship, okay? And there's something called the laws of electrolysis, okay? And there's a few laws, all right, by Faraday, all right? And that has to do with electricity and chemistry and the relationship that's going on there, okay? So frequency, chemistry, atomic structure, okay? Very important, because people like Maxwell, James Maxwell, who built on Faraday's works. See, Faraday didn't like math. He's like me. He didn't like math, okay? He didn't like math. He didn't know math equations. These math equations came later from people like Michael Faraday, okay, who literally just took Faraday's work. Like, he knew it was right, and he took other people's work, and he actually mathematically formulated a lot of it, and he showed the connections between it mathematically, right? So, he has a bunch of papers, right? Like, one here is the theory of molecular vortices applied to magnetic phenomena. Okay, where he's talking about magnetic vortices within the ether. Okay, these magnetic vortices create matter, right? just like Walter Russell saying, just like Michael Faraday saying, just like all these people are saying, which we could actually demonstrate, which we have, okay, through chromatic chemistry, okay, through quartz being turned into gold through frequencies, okay, many different ways to demonstrate our points, okay, through how chemistry is even viewed on a molecular way through light, right? So, how magnets and electricity affect our DNA, right, and our chemical structures. Okay, here's a scientific paper, discovery of a new principle: chiral molecules adhere to magnets. Okay, so how our molecular structure is actually affected by electricity, by frequencies, by magnets, because what is an electric field? It's a magnetic and dielectric field, right? So how these fields affect us, because those are the fields that make up the universe, okay? Very important to know that these fields from the universe could affect us and our chemistry and our biology and how we feel and everything, okay? So that has to do with the ancients. When the ancients are talking about, the universe got sung into existence, right? We talk about frequencies, we talk about genetics and chemical structures literally being formed within space, and those space structures having effects within us on the earth, okay? We're talking about deep knowledge that was passed on for generations, that people didn't have that many descriptions of words. They didn't have a million words for one thing, to explain. So, like light, energy, frequency, all these things would be one term. So, their knowledge that was passed on, now we got a million words and we're trying to break things down, but they try and say, it's simple or this and that. No, we're overcomplicating things that don't need to be complicated. You don't need a million words for water. That doesn't make you primitive. Okay? Especially when you're dealing with the same technology and the same geometry. Okay? But you're trying to say, they're not that technologically advanced back in the day. Well, I don't know. We got 11 evidence for that too. We're going to break that down too in later videos. So they could say that. We'll see what the evidence says. Anyway, there's people now, right, like Michael Levin, right, and basically what his works are, right, he's a biochemist, okay, and he's actually showing the effects of electricity on our body, and how, how salamanders could regrow limbs. He's trying to do that for human beings, and he's showing the technology, he's creating technologies, he's showing the science, he's demonstrating a lot of things, like how electricity has to do with chemistry, has to do with biology, DNA, all these things. Okay, so all these things are interconnected, right? Which people within the mainstream scientific community are going to try and separate, say are different, which is really not. Okay, so I sound really critical, but things matter. Okay, everything matters. All right, and when people are pulling the wool over your head, you got to address these things. All right, because science is a good thing, but you don't have to believe science. You don't have to believe anything. Okay, do your own research, learn the experiments, learn what they're using, read. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone wants you to believe the next man. What is that? What is this third party society where you need to call the cops, you need to call ambulance, you need to call firemen, you need to you always gotta rely on someone else. People can't do things for themselves. That's what's taught. And then when you start doing things for yourself, then they're gonna start hating. And it's like, let me not rant too far. Okay. So if you haven't heard it anywhere first, I haven't heard anyone say this. I'm gonna be the first to say it if no one else has said it. Plasma and crystals are the same thing. Okay, as far as a definition. Okay, so to define these things, it's just organized chemistry. Okay, understand that. Understand how they try and make one thing different than the next, right? How they try and make mist and water different from each other, right? So, from plasma crystals and helical structures towards inorganic matter. Okay, in this paper, they discuss how basically plasma forms helical structures, crystalline, organized lattice structures, and even acts as organic matter, and sometimes it behaves like it's alive, because it is. Because within the mainstream scientific community, they think things are dead, or they think something has life, some things don't. That's not true. Okay, petrification happens and things turn to stone and stuff like that and gems, but it has life in it. It vibrates. It's still alive. Everything's alive. This feather's alive. This chair's alive. Everything's alive. Okay, their vision of life has to do with certain conscious level which they try and measure, but then they always lowball everything else. And then every time they do an experiment on a damn animal, it's always more smarter and more conscious than what they thought. Okay, so take this into consideration when we talk about space, when we talk about plasma and the UAPs, and remember when the ancestors talk about how everything was a vibration and a song, okay, sung into existence, okay? And when they give you those field geometries and you see it, all right, pay attention, because it's going to blow your mind, okay? So, in this paper, all right, this actually is talking about the discoveries of these two men, all right? These two scientists, one is Petrovich Gariev and the other is Vladimir Popanin, okay? And they showed that DNA can be influenced by language vibrations and specific frequencies, okay? So the way frequency and language and music and sounds literally shapes and affects DNA, okay? So when we talk about field pressures and field interactions and how that affects you, right? When they talk about epigenetics, which we'll get into in the next videos, right? Later videos, right? About epigenetics. When we talk about a field, when you are in the field of someone else, how those fields interact and how that it could affect your body, because your immune system is 80% your skin, okay, and it has to do with your biofield, your aura, all right. That has nothing to do with a physical thing like on your body. It has to do with the fields, how they're interacting with other fields and the energies that are within these fields and how they interact. Okay, so everything is deep divine knowledge that they took from us, and then they try to put the wool over our head because it's there. Because they can't lie, they can't hide stuff. That's why they always put these symbols, but they try to make it evil and stuff. So they can't hide it. So what they do is they misinterpret it and then they repackage it in a different way that's actually detrimental and poisonous to the mind. Alright? So, moving on. Even PBS posting, oh, your DNA codes are probably from outer space, right? How cosmic frequencies affect the whole genetic structure, everything, even going on here on Earth, everything, okay? So the chemical structures and everything come from what? Come from atoms, come from compression and capacity, reactions, electric reactions, okay? Very important. Very important for future videos too, okay? So here's more to add on to it. We keep adding on information. So when people click the links, there's a million things and there's no denying this stuff, right? So cosmic rays may explain life's bias to right-handed DNA. Okay, so all DNA comes out right-handed, just like there's a right-handed rule in the electric field, right? And you can use your right hand. You can find the dielectric, you can find the magnetic, then you can find the currents, right? The electric, right? So, and they're always 45 degrees from each other, right? So that right-handed rule applies to DNA as well, right? And that right-handed rule comes from cosmic frequencies, because basically when we're talking about quantum mechanics in the other videos, right, everything exists within fields, the whole universe. Like, we're within the Milky Way's field, you know, and within that field they try and say that a particle that could exist here and the other side of the universe simultaneously, right? And it could be the same particle, but they try and tell you that in a way that you picture this particle, that you picture a rope, and you picture the other particle, which is not what's going on. It's actually like a field, right? And we all exist within this field. And when you disturb the field, you create reactions. So basically, what they call like the observer effect, right? They try and say when you view a particle, it changes states, which is not true. Basically, the particle exists within a field, then they shoot a laser and they excite the field, they disturb it, and then they're measuring that disturbance, right? So once you disturb the field, it changes the state of what's going on. All right. So does that make sense? So wrap up this video. Okay. So we know what's going on here, right? Basically. Okay. This is chemistry as taught, and then this is the truth. Okay. Basically, and then this is how we're gonna build our models moving forward, so we know. Okay, and it's going to make sense. All right. So chemistry as taught is the study of matter, its properties, and how it changes during its reactions. Okay. But the truth, what we know, is the universe is mental, it's electrical, and it's rhythmic. And chemistry is a study of light interactions, meaning light in different states and how it interacts, okay, within different field pressures and mediums, okay? So, chemistry as taught, they're going to teach you that protons and neutrons make up a nucleus while electrons orbit around the nucleus, which is wrong. Even they show it. They show pictures of what they call the electron clouds. They show clouds, what they call clouds, which is basically radiation, okay? What's really going on here? The truth. A proton equals a neutron in a polarized electrical state. An electron is dielectric potential, okay? Very simple, okay? They're going to say atoms make up elements. The amount of protons and electrons determines the element, which is true. Atoms make up elements. More capacity, dielectric, along with energy storage, magnetism, creates high energy light. Okay, very simple. The periodic table they're going to use is Mendeleev's. Okay, and the periodic table they use is going to also interpret the elements, because they had the noble gases and then they mixed it up in a certain way, and then they give it these little letters and stuff. And what we're going to use is the Walter Russell periodic table, okay? And that might disturb people, okay? But it is what it is, okay? It has all the pressure gradients, it has all the frequencies, okay? It has everything, it explains the octaves and everything, okay? And for people who are denying that and don't want to go with that, that's cool. That's the model we're building on here, okay? And we're going with many other models. We're not just, writing on his model, writing on his model. We're just taking the truth and we're building on that, okay? So, just to further and to end the nuclear argument, okay? We're going to talk about, you don't know about nuclear physics. That's cool. You could say that, you know? It's not like I haven't debated nuclear physicists before, right? I got one on YouTube, actually. I debated nuclear physicists. But anyway, if you want to make a bomb, right? Don't do it. But if you wanted to, right? On a scientific level, what are you doing? I'm not talking about going into the store and making something, right? Because chemistry is a hell of a thing, okay? Right? You have to isolate uranium-235, okay? And uranium-235 sits in between 234 and 238. And the way they isolate that particular element from these, right, is through a centrifugal force. Okay, so that centrifugal force is separating these molecular structures, okay, these chemical structures, okay? So what's going on there, right? The refraction, the refraction, the compression, the centrifugal, the centripetal, okay? That common theme is going to exist throughout this whole series, okay? It's very redundant, but it is what it is. That's how things work, okay? And when we see that, everything makes more sense, okay? We can see how they pull the wool over our heads. We can see a lot of things, right? We can see how they materialize science. And then they come up with these articles, and oh my, it would be so goofy. Some things we read, it's incredible, okay? So, I'm actually leave y'all with a prediction, okay? And this is what I know. And maybe other people know it. It's cool. I haven't heard this prediction, but it's cool. I got something for y'all, right? So, my prediction, because salt is a crystal. Now, salt is a discussion we're going to get into in later videos, okay? They have a salt deficient. They have a scared of salt, okay? But if you get shot right now, if you lose a limb, if you're sick, if anything happens to you and you take an ambulance or you go into a hospital, the first thing they're going to give you is an IV with damn saline, which is salt water. Salt water. God, goddess, brother, sister, cousin, listen. You can get shot and they're going to give you salt water. Understand how important salt is. It's a crystal for your body, which is electrical. Understand that. We're going to get deeper into that in further videos. We're going to get into the biology part of this, okay? But my prediction, salt plus water in the fourth phase. What is that? Okay, so there's a fourth phase of water, just like there's a fourth phase of matter, plasma. Okay, and the fourth phase of water is a gelatin-like substance, which is the thing that actually makes up the cell. When they talk about the cell, like the membranes and all this stuff, okay, that jelly, okay, that's the structured water that actually exists in our body. When they say our body is 70-80% water, it's a structured gelatin-like water. Okay, so that particular water, when given the crystal energy, right, from salt, right, the ability to create dielectric potential, okay, plus ether, which is when you breathe the air. Okay, so when the air enters the system, all right, your lungs actually make blood. Okay, so they don't just pump oxygen, they don't do that. Okay, they make blood. Okay, so when you breathe in the ether, okay, and you have enough dielectric potential, okay, and through this chemistry of the water in the fourth phase, having enough salt plus the ether, that's what creates the blood plasma within your body that is healthy. Okay, that's my prediction. It also has to do with a few more minerals, not just salt. I'm gonna use salt, okay, but it has to do with this particular chemical reaction that's going through your body that actually will help cells and energize them, and that's what creates this, which pumps everything you need through the whole system. Understand that. Okay, then it comes out as urine later. Okay, so on that note, that was the chemistry lesson. To the collective, I appreciate people giving me their time. Okay, if you're new here, subscribe. Okay, because this series is going to keep getting deeper. Okay, we're not just going to be talking about science. We're going to talk about history. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. Okay, we're going to be talking about space travel too. Okay, with evidence. Okay, scientific evidence. This isn't me making stuff up. This is. We're going to have a bunch of good information here. Okay. It is about to be April, and the New Year is upon us. So happy New Year's to those. If they see that around this time, I'm pretty sure it'll be posted around that time, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. But to those who celebrate New Year's in the springtime now, when everything's growing, happy New Year's, y'all. Happy New Year's to the collective. A lot of us sometimes get a little depressed during holidays, during these little things. We have these little bit of gripes, through these little things like these retrogrades that are going on right now. It's important to remain positive and strong, especially in this time right now with these retrogrades. It was very war-minded. I felt it too, man. I had to face a lot, and I feel so grateful. Like, I learned so much about myself. Like, within this year, it's crazy, and I know people are growing too. To that, I say keep going, and just take all the responsibility on your shoulder. Like, don't be scared to do that. Don't be scared to take responsibility for your life, for your actions, for the things that are going on around you. You have more control than you think, even though there are other forces at play, other higher powers. Some would even say I have a strange fascination with oil, and they probably think because it's a power thing, which is a fair, actually, guess. I mean, why not, right? But I mean, I feel like the way I interpret that story is different than other people, perhaps, because I feel like the most important part of Oya's story is that she was more powerful than all the gods, and that she chose to not control people or to be that power vindictive being. She chose, no one controls me. At the same time, I will not control you, though I am the most powerful being in this damn realm. And ain't nothing gonna stop me. That doesn't mean I have to control you at all. And send whoever you want. Let's get it. So that's my message to y'all. Be that energy. And just know that it exists in you. You have the power of the universe within you. Okay? You are the most powerful being when you choose to be. And don't use your energy in a way that's vindictive or controlling. Chaotic energy you can't control. get used to it and learn how to use things in the right way. Seriously. This is a message to y'all. I know I'm off topic with the chemistry stuff, but this is a message to the collective and how we can get better, okay? I don't expect the people who just came here for chemistry to tune into this part. It's fine. But on that message, peace to y'all. Keep fighting. Keep going, okay? This is a great time. Everything is blossoming, including our gifts, okay? For the people who are talking about the year of the fire horse, now it's beginning. Peace, y'all.